Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City Club of Eugene's September 8th program, Through the Eyes of a Child, Race, Culture, Ethnicity, with Dr. Johnny Lake. My name's Andrew Calick, and I'm City Club's president. Today, City Club comes to you live from the 5th Street Market District in the heart of downtown Eugene. And it's my pleasure to welcome everyone back from summer break, whether you're ready or not, for a brand new season of City Club programming. For 3 decades, the City Club of Eugene has remained dedicated to its founding mission to build community vision through open inquiry. In accordance with our mission and purpose, we hope to connect people throughout our community and across generations, identities, experiences, and perspectives. As you might have read in this week's Eugene Weekly, we're particularly excited to focus some of this season's programming on the fullness of Eugene's economy, going beyond a dollar and cents analysis of trends to understand the stories of the people who make our city go. So whether you came to Eugene to run at Hayward Field, or teach in our science labs, build Silicon Shire, or brew beloved IPAs, labor in our forests, our farms, or our factories, we value your perspective and what you bring to our community, and we want you here at City Club. In addition, while we'll be right here at 5th Street most weeks, we are also taking City Club on the road this season to engage different neighborhoods of concern to engage different neighborhoods on issues of concern to them. Our first program of this kind is in 2 weeks' time, when we'll be talking about the manufacturing economy of our region live from Arcimoto's factory right down the road here in Eugene. So come, learn a bit about what we're building in town, take a factory tour, maybe even take a spin on our own favorite locally made fun utility vehicle. It'll be a good time. We hope to see you there. Of course, we cannot do this work alone, and I want to send a special thank you to our Platinum, Community, and Diamond sponsors. Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, they're serving as a catalytic leader in creating a vibrant and diverse economy that drives economic opportunity and well-being. Kaiser Permanente exists to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at kp.org. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. More information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health has been proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond as your hometown healthcare provider for more than 80 years. The Peace Health mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. And thank you to the City of Eugene and Lane County for their support as well. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a longtime listener, I invite you to support our work by becoming an individual member, a business or community sponsor, or to suggest an idea for an upcoming program. You can do all those things and more at cityclubofeugene.org. Your support and engagement make these community conversations possible. And of course, City Club isn't just about conversation. It's about taking that conversation and translating it into action. So it's my hope that with informed understanding, you'll engage on the issues impacting our community. And today, we are invited to strengthen our relationships as neighbors and to consider issues and impact through stories that may be unfamiliar to us. And there's nobody better equipped to teach us the power of story than Dr. Johnny Lake. Dr. Lake is a nationally and internationally recognized educator and speaker whose work focuses on relationships and impact and influence of diversity, race, and culture on student, academic, and business performance and achievement. He's also a recent recipient of the City Club's Turtle Award. So we've got international recognition, national recognition, and of course, local recognition. Dr. Lake views himself as a story sharer because he believes that once we share a story, we will never be strangers again. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lake back to the City Club of Eugene.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you all for the invitation and opportunity to hang out with you for a little bit. Somebody asked me to talk about my work with children, and it made me excited because our children are the best lens we have for the work that we are doing. We are touching the future when we help our children. They're the ones who will take your place, my place. So it's really important. But I'll begin with the fact that I get invited to kindergarten, first grade classes a lot. I don't even know exactly why. But they want me to come and talk to the kindergartners and first graders. And I go in and the kindergartners, I'm 6'2", they like 1'1". So it's really hard for me to get on their level. So I'll ask for one of those little blankets. And the teacher's like, you want to get on the floor? I'm like, yeah, I need to get on the floor because I need to make this connection with these kids. So she says, you got a suit on. I said, give me the blanket. I get on the floor with the kids. They gather around like a bunch of little chickens. And then they start touching my hair. Then they start touching my skin. And then I will ask them, where do you think I'm from? You guys gonna be kindergarten, first grade in so a minute? Y'all remember kindergarten, first grade? How many people remember kindergarten, first grade, second grade? Go back to there. You got this guy like me in the room, and I say, where do you think I'm from? What do the kids say? Africa. They're not even shy. Africa! Africa! They can't wait to get it out. And I act confused, and I'm like, Africa? I'm like, how did you get Africa? And their little wheels start turning, and they say, well, because of your skin. And I got confused again. I look at my skin. I said, my skin don't say Africa. I don't have no African maps on me. I don't have no African clothes on. I don't have an African headdress. I'm not speaking African language. How did you get Africa? And their little wheels started turning. They said, well, because you're black. I said, well, what does that have to do with being from Africa? Well, black people are from Africa. They reported out as the truth. So what have our kindergartners, first graders been exposed to at that point that they can report out determinedly that black people are from Africa? So I asked them, how many of you are Irish? Let me see hands. You're Irish. Anybody? Are you from Ireland? Kids will say no. How many people are German? Got German background. Are you from Germany? They'll say no. How many people are Latino? Are you from Latin America? They'll say no. I said, so can you look at somebody and tell where they're from? They'll say no. I said, so if you really want to know where somebody's from, what should you do? Ask them. You just had a kindergarten lesson. It might have been too complex for all of you people here. But if you slow down a little bit, you might understand what that meant. That the little stereotypes, little already held beliefs about other people start when? When kids are very, very young. And you can extrapolate that to other identities that kids learn about, and they think they know something about somebody that they never even met. And so for us as adults, if we want to know about another part of our community that's different than ourselves, instead of going with the stereotypes or the bias or the already held beliefs, what should we do? I think y'all might have got it. But then I tell them, I'm not from Africa, I'm from Tennessee. And it's a long ways away from here. It's about halfway to Africa. It's over 2,000 miles to get to Tennessee. I said, do you think it's different in Tennessee than it is here? Yes, it is. I said, well, let me tell you how different it was. If this was my class, my first grade class, everybody would be black. And I said, plus my teacher was black, and she was my auntie. So I was teacher's pet in first grade. I thought school was great. If this is the way school works, I want to go every day. Went in the second grade, all the kids were black. And I got in the class with a black teacher who had been girlfriends with my father when they were growing up, so she thought I was really, really cute too. So I got to be teacher's pet in the second grade. I love school. This is great. Went in the third grade, all the kids was black, had another black teacher, and I think this one escaped from the army or something, because she was the toughest teacher I ever had. She was a good teacher. I went back and told her as a grown man, she was a good teacher. But when I was in third grade, if I could have paid somebody to bump a teacher off, I would have told them, get rid of this teacher. She's messing up school. This ain't the way it's supposed to work. So I survived third grade, went into fourth grade, all the kids were black, and I got in a room with another woman who was girlfriends with my father when they were growing up, so she thought I was really cute too. So I got to be teacher's pet in the fourth grade. School is all right. I want you to think of a fourth grader, 10 years old, growing up in that environment. How much did I know about black culture? By 10. I knew how to walk like your leg was broke. Come home walking like this. Mama's like, what's wrong with your leg? Did you get hurt? No, Mama, just walking like the big boys. Because all the basketball players, guess how they walked around school all day long? Like they could hardly make it. You think they were sick. They could hardly make it. When the game started, they running like a deer, dunking on folks, talking trash. After the game, guess what? Their leg broke again. They can't hardly get out the gym. That's who I wanted to be. How to say what's up without using your hands. Anybody know how to do that? Ain't nobody supposed to see it but your homie anyway. Stick your head in the class, boom, you gone. Teacher didn't even see you. Baggy pants, all our kids think they're new. That's not new. You just better not let your mama see you wearing baggy pants hanging out when you leave the house. You get to school, you sag all day long. Bad man. Get ready to go home, pull them pants up and put that belt on, because you know you got to deal with your mother. Now, am I describing to you aspects of race or aspects of culture? I want you to remember that. Because how did I learn that culture? Did somebody give me a class? Okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. All right, you can be black. How did I learn that culture? Lived it like a fish in the water. Didn't even know I was learning. Guess how you learn your culture? The same way. So a lot of times when we bring people together, we think the differences is something we can attribute to race. We have to recognize that culture is the bigger part of who we are and our identity. 814 Pruitt Street, that's my house. Bolivar, Tennessee. Anybody been there besides me? That's my house. You came out the front door, you turned left, you got to the church. Our church was so close to our house, you could go to church without leaving our house. You could hear the preacher, you could hear the choir singing, Miss So-and-so, whoo, when she fell out, you knew who she was anyway. And next door to the church was a little store that if you could get cookies two for a penny. You could get caramel kisses 2 for a penny. Anybody old enough to remember that? You had a quarter, you get in real trouble at this store, which I did on a regular basis. And it was ran by a black man. Come out of my house, you turn right, you got to my Aunt Vaseline Horton's house. A little short black woman, wore these big aprons, kept her tools in her pocket all the time, worked in the yard all the time, and was the biggest tattletale on the street. If she found out something about you, you could bet she gonna go tell your mama. She got me more whippings than anybody on that street. She called my mom on the telephone one day, said, go in the backyard, look at what your boy is doing. I don't know what I was doing that day, but she got me a whipping that day. In the culture I'm from, you might not like your auntie, but you respect them. So I'd go by, hey, Aunt Vaseline, and go right over to my second auntie, Ada Lee Lake. Anybody know her? She was a different kind of auntie. You did something bad at her house, she'd give you a fair warning. Boy, you do that again, I'm going to have to tell your mama. So you quit it, didn't make it home. Plus, Ada Lee made cookies, cakes, and pies all the time. So going to her house is going to be a treat. Next door to her was that third grade teacher, Miss Brown. She was not only tough at school, she was tough at home. Our ball went in the yard one day, she picked it up like this and looked at us and walked in the house with it. And kept it for like a week before she gave it back. Keep your darn ball out of my yard. You didn't mess with Miss Brown at school or at home. And everybody up that street was black and related to me or familiar enough that I could walk into their house without even knocking. I want you to make me 10 again. And I'm walking up and down the street. And I look up and I see Andrew. Andrew, could you stand up so everybody see how good looking you are? I see Andrew. What's my first conclusion without even thinking about it? He must be lost. Or he's selling encyclopedias. Or he come to put a phone in or take a phone out. Or he's collecting insurance money from somebody. Or he's undercover police. He thinks we don't know what they look like around here. They look exactly like him. If you gave me 100 reasons why Andrew was on Pruitt Street, would one of them be he bought a place and he's now going to be my neighbor? 100 reasons, I would never conclude that. Why not? And I want you to think critically. How does a little 10-year-old boy have that much information about somebody they have never met in their life? This is the power of context. If anybody's taking notes, this is the power of context. Context first defines your worldview, then context controls your worldview. I want you to take that with you today. Your context has defined your worldview, and then the context controls your worldview. So much so that I ain't even going to ask no questions. I ain't going to say, are you going to move over here? Are you going to live over here? And so we have to remember that context teaches us two very powerful things unconsciously. It teaches us who belongs, but more significantly, guess what it teaches us? Who does not belong. And we don't even ask any questions about it. Nobody has to tell us with our mouth. This is the power of context. How many people grew up in a place where most of the people around you, they kind of look like you, walk like you, talk like you, live like you, were like you? Get your hands up, everybody. And take a look around the room, because this is 2023, but guess what? Most of us grew up in a place that you should consider a monocultural context, which means you develop what kind of lens for the world? A single lens. And whose lens is right? Mine. So if you disagree with me, I'm sorry for you. You got to be wrong. Do you see how bias is built in? And when you left that place, what did you do with that lens? Did you leave it there? What did you do with that lens? And now you are trying to operate in a multicultural context. What kind of lens you got? What happens to your little monocultural lens? It get beat up pretty good until you learn to do what? Develop a multicultural lens, a multicultural perspective of the world, which how many ways is there to be right in a multicultural world? Here's a lesson from a 4-year-old. It may be too complex for you guys too. Could I pick on you? You look like you could hold your own with me. Come up here. Come up here with me. I want you to be stubborn.
Stubborn?
Stubborn. And show these people.
I'm sorry, stubborn or southern?
Stubborn. Stubborn.
With the T.
Yeah, stubborn. S-T-U. Show these people which way is left. Put your arm out. No, it's this way. Keep your arm out. Am I pointing left? Yeah. See, they agree with me. You better change your mind. What's the dilemma here? Put your arm out again. What's the dilemma here? Who's correct? Who's correct? That's almost un-American. He's opposing me. He can't be correct. If I'm correct, he's got to be what? Do you see how this is a problem? Because he can be correct and I can be correct at the same time, even though we're diametrically opposed. Instead, what do we want somebody to do? You know what? I really like this guy. I think we could hang out. You know, I like the way you think. I think you and I could really be friends. But what did that person have to do with their whole life experiences, worldview, and everything else? Anybody want to do this one? This is what happens, and I'll show you how it works organizationally. Could I pick on you? Would you come up here and help me out with this guy? Would you stand over here? Yeah, stay that way.
Okay.
Would you show him which way is left?
Which way is left?
Yeah. Did you get it yet?
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah.
Would you come up and help out? Stand here. Would you show this guy which way is left? You get it yet? If this is an organization or a company, how long is this guy going to be here?
I'm gone.
Do you see what happens to different thinkers? You see what happens to unique people who may not fit the norm in our community? What happens to it? Not only individually might they get condemned, but what happens organizationally or community-wise or structurally? And this is why people like this will do what? They will leave this community. So we really have to negotiate this better. Thank you for letting me pick on you. All of you did a great job. In fact, how many lefts could there be in a room like this? And what do we lose if we don't listen to people who have a different perspective? What have we lost with women being silenced in much of our history? People of color having to fight just to get an education, just to go to school. And so these issues are really relevant to today, not just our history. I'm going to read this because I want you to hear it a couple of times. The U.S. Census defines race as a person's self-identification with one or more social groups. I'll read it again. U.S. Census defines race as a person's self-identification with one or more social groups. Talk to your neighbor. Tell them if that makes any sense. Talk. 11? Thank you. Okay, now since you've had a conference, put your hand up if that makes any sense to you. One hand? Anybody else? 2, 3? Y'all need to come hang out with my 3rd and 4th graders. Because they're like, that don't make any sense. Did you pick your race? No, I didn't pick my race. And what is the social group for white people? Is there a social group that white people join? Self-identified? Do you see how weird this is? Because this is the U.S. Census. This is not somebody on the street. And when it comes to ethnicity, guess what ethnicity is in our U.S. Census? Hispanic or non-Hispanic. That's the only ethnicity represented on the census. That's all we got for ethnicity in this country, right? Either Hispanic or non-Hispanic. That's it. Okay, 3rd grade class. 22 kids. I got a bunch of little knucklehead boys. They was fighting, racial fighting on the playground. So they called me, Dr. Lake, would you come work with our little boys? So I got 22 of these little rascals. And no staff, so it's me. But I'm good with them. And we talking about race. Is Latino a race? Raise your hand if you think Latino is a race. Raise your hand. One little 3rd grader, he started frowning. And the more we talked, the more he frowned. And finally he raised his hand. He says, no, Latino's not a race. I said, why not? He said, look, I'm black and I'm Latino. He's white and he's Latino, so Latino's not a race. And did the little 3rd grade, dumb man, where'd you get that question from in the first place? So this is why I say I do progressive work with our children and remedial work with adults. And I don't laugh when I say that, because our children are better at this stuff than we are. I'm in one of our school districts here training teachers. I used to do a lot of teacher training, and I'm training teachers. And I walk in the room and I'm like, what's the first thing you noticed about me when I came in your school today? You were tall. We really like your suit. That's a nice necktie. You're wearing glasses. You're a nice looking man. You have a nice smile. You look like you're in shape. I'm the only black person in the room, by the way. They beat all around the bush. And finally somebody says, okay, I'm just going to say it. You're black. I said, okay, let's start over, because it was one of our rural communities. I'm like, when I was driving into your town, I said, what's the first thing people noticed? Was it my suit? Was it my necktie? This is how we as adults skirt around the real issues. I met with the kids at this same school district after school, and I said, what's the first thing you kids noticed about me when I came into school? You were black. You were African American. With no hesitation. And that was probably 25 or 30 years ago when that happened. And that was the aha that made me start saying I do progressive work with children and remedial work with adults. I'm in the store pushing a basket. White woman coming toward me, almost tall as I am. Got a little girl, look like she's about 4. And the woman didn't see me. I don't know how that happened, because I'm 6'2", I'm 200 pounds, I'm pretty black. I'm not hard to see, especially in a white aisleway. But she made sure she did not look in my direction. She got that basket by me, and her little girl didn't make it. She did see me. She saw me so surely she stopped. Mom didn't even see her stop. And she looks up at me and she says, why are you black? Now Mom heard that, reached back and started dragging the little girl away. And I said, hold on, I'll talk to her. I said, my skin's this color because my father's skin's about the same color as mine. I said, I bet your father's skin's about the same color as yours. End of conversation. For 30 years, I've never had to go any further with a child than that explanation you just heard. Never. And it happened more than once. I mean, God is not kind to me. These examples, people are like, where do you get these stories from? It's like they happen all the time. I don't have time to make them up. I'm at the university working. I go do an errand. A grandmother's coming with 2 little girls, little blonde, little brunette. And they walk by me, and they walk by like this. I don't think they'd ever been that close to a black man. And they went in, and I went and did my chore, and when I was coming back, coincidentally, guess who I ran into coming out? Same 2 little girls and their grandmother. And they stared at me again, and some told me, I need to talk to these little girls. I said, who are your little girls? Are y'all new students? And they're like, tee-hee-hee-hee-hee, no, we're not new students. We're too little to be new students. I said, you could be new students here. No, we couldn't. We're too little. I said, you could be new students here. I said, well, you about as smart as the other kids in my class anyway. When I told that to my class, they didn't laugh that much about that. And I said, how old are you? She says, I'm 4. I said, how old are you? She says, I'm 4. I said, are you twins? They says, no. I said, well, both of you can't be 4. They said, yes, we are. I said, are you twins? They said, no. I said, both of you can't be 4. One of you got to be 5, one of you got to be 3 or something. Come on, tell me the truth. We both are 4. They got attitude. And the little brunette says, we hug and kiss. And I don't know why she said that, but grandmother had to explain that. She says, in our family, we hug and kiss. I said, that's really good, because in our family, we hug and kiss too. I said, you gonna give me a hug? Mm-mm. By that time, the little blonde had walked up and reached out and touched my hand. And she asked that same question, why are you black? And I said the same answer. My father's skin's about the same color as mine. I said, I bet your father's skin's about the same color as yours. And she stepped a little bit closer. I said, you gonna give me a hug? She said, yeah, and gave me a little bear hug. Now, as adults, I want you to track the trajectory of learning that a child goes through in a few minutes with something as challenging to them as race. First, they saw me. When they went inside, you think they forgot about me? They was probably in there talking. Did you see that man? Did you see his skin? What was wrong with him? Look at his skin. Coming out, fortunately, they ran into me. I played with them enough to get their little courage up, so they interacted with me. And a 4-year-old approaches the unknown. How much courage does that take? How many of you got that courage? How many of you got that courage that a 4-year-old had to approach the unknown? And not only approach the unknown, but reach out and touch the unknown. Why was it important that she touched me? Why was it important to that child that she put her hands on me? Why was that important? As the other little kids, we got to touch my hair and touch my skin. Why was that important?
That's reality testing.
Reality testing, because see if it feels like what? Other skin they felt. The little baby got new information. How long did it take her to incorporate that into her worldview? I do 2-week trainings with adults trying to get us to do what? Please just see each other as fellow human beings. Be courageous enough to reach out and touch, reach out and learn about each other. We have no better example than our children. I have 2 granddaughters, one little chocolate girl and one little light-skinned girl. I take them dress shopping all the time, and I spend money. I take $100 bills on purpose so they know whatever dress you want, we gonna get it. We was going dress shopping, they looked at me, they said, Papa, this year when we go home, are we going home this year? That's what they asked. And I said, home? I said, what are you talking about home, baby? She said, Tennessee. I said, Tennessee? I said, you weren't born in Tennessee? I said, your parents weren't even born in Tennessee. I said, why y'all call Tennessee home? Because they said, Papa, that's where a bunch of our cousins live. That's where it's a bunch of people who look like us. And that's where you from too, Papa. I said, that's a pretty good answer. When we got done dress shopping, they looked at me and they said, Papa, this time when we go home to Tennessee, we don't want to come back to Oregon. I hope you feel what that felt like to me. That my little granddaughters, in 2 weeks in Tennessee, get more affirmation, more safety, more sense of belonging, more sense of home than they do for 50 weeks here where they were born and raised. I think we can do better than that, especially for all of our children, not just some of them. Maya Angelou has this amazing quote, that the ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned. One of my little granddaughters got an afro like I used to have. Guess what they tell her in Tennessee? Baby, your hair is so beautiful. Guess what she heard in school here? Please don't wear your hair like that to school because you distract all the other children. Her little beautiful brown skin, my little light-skinned child, we go to Hawaii every year. Coming back from Hawaii, she gets tan. And she said, Papa, look, my skin is getting pretty just like yours. Is that what she hears at school about her skin? Do you see the work we have to do? And if you keep in mind that our children are the lens for our work in our community, I hope everybody in this room has a child that you have taken some responsibility with, to help them to learn, help them to see this as their community, and help them build those relationships that will make us a better community for everybody. So I think my time, young man, my time up?
Oh, yeah.
I can keep talking?
You got like 3 more minutes, 3, 5.
I got 3 minutes? I got a lot of notes here.
Another story.
What's that?
Another story.
Yeah, I'll tell you one that hurts a little bit. I was at this house with these friends. Well, they weren't friends. They were people I knew, building a house, and had a little 4-year-old, and we made roads on the ground. And I used to be good at that when I was 4. So me and him was tearing it up. And he looks up at me and he says, "Are you an N-word?" He's 4. Just straight out. "Are you an N-word?" What do you think my response was? I punched him in the mouth. You little punk, say it again. I'll punch you in the mouth again. That would have solved nothing, right? Instead, I told him that's a really mean word that people say that hurts black people's feelings. It's kind of like if I told you, you know, you're really stinky or you really ugly. I said, "You wouldn't like that, would you?" He's like, "No." I said, "So don't say that word to black people, because some of them may get mad and they may punch you in your little nose." But I give you this example because if that boy heard that at 4 years old, who did he like to hear it from? The most powerful people in his life. Folks who taught him how to walk and how to talk and how to poop and how to brush his teeth and how to do everything. So when he heard it come out of their mouth, he probably thought that was the normal thing you say about black people. So his question to me was not an ugly, mean racial epithet. He was asking an honest question. If he stays in that same household, what is he going to hear at 8, 12, 16, 18? He's a grown man now. He comes to the university, wants to take classes so he can get an education. He's sitting in the classroom, the door opens up, and I walk in. What word goes to his mind without him even having to think about it? And we say we educate our children. Where from 4 years old to 18 years old has this boy had any chance to navigate the ugly language he's been exposed to? This is the work we have to do. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lake. We will begin our Q&A in just a moment. But first, I'd like to thank the business and in-kind sponsors whose support makes City Club possible. Network Charter School, Hirschner Hunter LLC, AARP, Evans, Elder, Brown, and Subert. Thank you also to our in-kind sponsors. That's KRVM 91.9 Radio, Pack Info and Simplified Computing LLC, Dotson's Photography, the Ninkasi Better Living Room, and Claim 52. Also, a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station, KLCC FM 89.7, for airing City Club programs Monday evenings at 7. For those listening at home right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We love that you are here. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived on KLCC, as well as on our YouTube channel and as podcasts. We'll take a brief break, and then we'll get back to Q&A. Thank you. Welcome back to the City Club of Eugene's Forum with Dr. Johnny Lake. We're now going to our question and answer period. If you have a question for Dr. Lake, feel free to come up to the microphone here. We'll also have some from our web audience, and we'll start with you, Sandra.
I'll go over here. Yes. Use this mic. Okay.
All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Sandra Bishop, City Club member since the beginning. It's been a long time. So this is a very uncomfortable question for me to ask. But it's the question that comes up in a lot of people's minds with the fact that a lot of people of color have come into the community, had great jobs, you know, looked like they're establishing their family here, and they've left. Why are you still here? What keeps you here?
Hard head for one thing. And that's not new. My mother said, Johnny will give you the shirt off his back if you ask him for it. Say you try to take a penny away from that boy, you have the worst fight you ever had in your life. I have found relationships here that I would encourage everybody to think about, because my community doesn't all look like me. Catherine Harrison just passed away at 99 years old at the Grand Round Reservation. I don't know how many people knew her. But I met her when I was 19 when I first came to Oregon. And she told her story about coming from Klamath down up to where they are now and how they had to walk. And the only thing they could do was they had to carry everything. And I had to leave the room twice. I got so pissed and so mad and so angry and cried 2 times. And she took me in as her grandson back then. And so I went to her 99th birthday, and I walked in, and she looked up, and she said, there's my grandson. And so I'm not from their tribe. I'm not Native American that I know that I can identify, but I am part of that tribe and that whole community. All of her children, her descendants, everybody know who I am. They named a school after her in Corvallis. And when they dedicated the school, they called me, and they said, you need to come because we're dedicating the school to your grandmother. And so I am working with that school to fulfill the vision of grandmother Catherine Harrison on a regular basis. And it's amazing. Here's two little boys. One light-skinned boy, one dark-skinned boy, and one called the other one the N-word. And the principal, white female, she says, would you talk to them? I said, yeah, I'll talk to them. She says, should I be there? And I'm like, you don't want these boys to think that only a black person can talk to them about the N-word. I mean, yeah, you need to be there. So she went with me, and we sat down, and the little light-skinned boy, I'm like, did you call him the N-word? Yes, I did. I'm like, why'd you call him N-word? Well, he was in my business. And I don't know what a 3rd grader got for business, but that was his attitude. He was in my business. I said, well, how come you didn't tell him, get out of your business? Why did you call him N-word? I don't know. I said, do you know what the N-word means? I asked the other boy, did he call you the N-word? He said, yeah. I said, do you know what the N-word means? I went back to the one who called him that. I said, come on, tell me, why did you use the N-word? I don't know. I said, yes, you do. I said, I want you to think about it. You used that word on purpose because you could have just told him, get out of your business. You picked that word on purpose. Why did you use that word? This boy, 3rd grade, says, because I wanted to hurt him. I says, what? He says, because I wanted to hurt him. I says, how did you know that word would hurt him? He says, because I get called that word all the time. And we say we don't educate our children. Neither one of these boys can tell you what that word means, but what do they know? That you can hurt people with it. I think I'm here because my children have been here. They grew up here. My grandchildren are here. And I am their link to the long ancestry that goes back in Tennessee to 1798 and 1741 on my mother's side, and my father's side 1798. Nobody ever leaves home. So every time they call, when you're coming home, they don't mean visit. They mean when you're coming to stay. So I'm the farthest away, but I bring my grandmother with me everywhere I go. My ancestors, my papa went to 2nd grade because that's all they afforded a black man. My grandma went to 4th grade. So me getting a PhD was an accomplishment for them. I have Hallie Ford. Everybody know Hallie Ford? She sponsors the Ford scholarships. I met Miss Hallie when I got that scholarship, and I made a presentation about my grandmother, and she says, "You got another grandmother." And so they did a book on the Ford family, Southern Oregon. And they called me and they said, "You need to come for the book release." I'm like, "Why?" They said, "Just be here." So I go down for the book release for the Ford family. Guess who's in the book with the Ford family? Me and Hallie Ford hugged up together in the book for the Ford family. And she's white, Native American. I got a Latina adopted grandmother here, called my mother in Tennessee. She asked for my mother's number. She called my mother in Tennessee. She said, "Don't worry about your boy. He's got another mother here. I make sure he gets food all the time." So every time she cooked a lot of food, she'd give me food to go in my freezer. And so I think if we limit our ideas about who our community is only to people who look like us, I think it makes it much more difficult to be here. But in saying that, I have had an incredibly difficult journey in Oregon from the first day here when the police pulled me over. And my afro was this big, and they said they was looking for somebody to look like me. I said, "I'm looking for somebody to look like me. I ain't seen nobody who look like me." And my sons suffered racial profiling. My oldest son got pulled over 7 times the first year he was driving. Guess what my grandsons are experiencing? And then we want to say it don't happen. And I got 3 generations of family, and I worry. My daughter says, "Daddy, when my son's not home on time or he don't call me when he says he's going to call me," she says, "I get scared to death." And she says, "I don't think white people understand that." And there's a video out about take a closer look or take a wider look, and it shows black family. And I shared it with my daughter when we were meeting, and she started crying. And she said, "Daddy, this is what I want white people to see about us, is that our families are just like theirs, that our children are important to us just like their children." And so these things are not easy, and that is a difficult question, I think, for our community to accept, that these things still go on, and that our families who are marginalized are still having to struggle tremendously. I can tell you stories all day long about every job I've had in Oregon, having to get attorneys to protect my job. U of O, I'm a straight A student, and I had to struggle with all kinds of barriers right down to the end. I graduated in my PhD teaching in a department that wasn't even my department because they wouldn't fund my GTF. So there's 2 sides to the story, and I feel proud of the accomplishments I've made, but it has come with a tremendous cost. Thank you.
Dr. Lake, you talked about context and the power of context, and you also spoke of these enormous, seemingly immovable objects in America, our history, our residential segregation, all these factors, and it can seem overwhelming to people. Where do we begin? So that's my question to you. Where do we begin individually and collectively to re-educate, to remediate, as you say, and make things better? Thanks.
Yeah. I believe that education is the key. I don't think politics is the key. I don't think military. I don't think economics is the key, but I do think if we can effectively educate people, and I see this with the young people, this is why I say our children are better at this stuff than we are. And it's not just race. When we're talking about gender identities, our children are better at it. Talk about trans identities. Kids are like, "Well, what's the problem, Dr. Lake? That's who they say they are. I mean, what's the big deal? Why is everybody making a big deal about it?" I talk to adults and, "Oh, baby's gonna get raped in the bathroom." Isn't there laws against raping babies in the bathroom already? And I was a child therapist for 11 years. I worked with the most damaged kids in the state of Oregon for 11 years. And almost every one of them had been physically, sexually abused. By a trans person? Or by who? Relatives. People closest to them who should have been caring for those children. And so when we look at these issues, we have to look, I think, broader than just the stigma that's attached to these identities, and then going to our bias and thinking that we know more about somebody than we actually do. My students get discouraged. 16 weeks, anybody want to do this for 16 weeks? Students said, Dr. Lake, I used to think I understood race. I don't know a darn thing about race. It is so complicated and so confusing. And by the time they're done with class, I have to build the students up. And so here's a strategy. Put your arms out. Put them out further. You ain't giving me everything. Come on. I want everything, every little bit you got. Get them out there. Get them out there. Guess how far your responsibility extends? Right there. You might not be able to fix the world. You might not be able to change these huge issues, but what's within your reach? If you can help one person, what's your responsibility? If you can help 10, what's your responsibility? If you can help 100, what's your responsibility? And I was taught this by my old grandmother. She said, baby, if it's ever in your hand to do good to another human being, she said, never turn your hand against them. And I saw that old woman practice that in a community that was really not rich. But I never saw a homeless child where I grew up. Never. Struck me like lightning one day when I was working here with so many homeless children. I was in a poor black community in Tennessee. I don't remember seeing a homeless child. I don't remember seeing a homeless family. Where were those people at? And it made me really question what kind of community we got that we can't help the least fortunate in our community, to the point that babies and children have to be on the street. I don't think it's resources. I think it's something else. So yeah, we have challenges, but again, I think it's these relationships as a community that allows us to take responsibility for those other people in our community. And once you bridge that difference, relationships become the bridge for all of this work. When you know someone else, my experiences with trans people started with a young man who transitioned to female. And I'm from Tennessee. I'm from a place where gay people didn't even exist. You guys know that, right? There were no gay people in Tennessee. Yeah. So my learning curve was incredible. But my goodness, was this the same person? Yes. Did I care about them the way I did before? Yes. But that was stuff in my head that I had to work on and learn and unlearn and relearn. And every one of us is in that boat. I don't know anybody in here who got it all figured out. There's no prescription either. Some of us have a lot of work to do. Some of us may have less work to do, but all of us have work to do. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Dr. Lake. My name is Nancy Buffum, and I'm from the Eugene Education Foundation. We give grants to educators for projects that it's the only way they'll get funded because the 4J for some reason can't. And one of our values is equity and access. And there's a lot of confusion around the word equity.
Oh, yes.
How would you be able to help us out a little bit with a good, easy, understandable definition of equity?
Yes.
That I can put on my application so that the teachers know what we're talking about?
Yes. How many people know the history of equity? The word equity. It's worth looking up. It started in England, in the courts. And the courts were pretty, well, I don't know, probably like the courts today. The rich people had advantages in the court system because they were aligned with the judges. And so poor people going to court, guess what happened to them? They got rolled over. They wasn't able to do nothing. And so they went to the king and they says, this is not fair. The judges and the rich folks are in bed together and we can't get any justice through the court system. So the king set up what they call the equity court. And it was overseen by an administrator who, the text says, the decision was made on the basis of conscience, not on precedence. Anybody heard that before? That equity is not following precedent. Equity follows conscience. And if you think of it that way, that's a higher order of responsibility than just going by the rule of law. And so, how do you think the rich people felt about that? If a man sold some bread, they're supposed to cut his hand off. But if you go to the equity court, guess what the equity court would say? Give the man some bread and send him home and get him a job so he can get some bread for his family. The rich people hated that, so they resented the equity court. They said his length of a man's big toe determined what happened in the equity court. That's how they criticized the equity court. And so in your question, here's my definition, and this came from the huge dictionary. Equity is justice applied without the benefit of a law or a rule. Justice applied without the benefit of a law or a rule. And I've used this to talk about these achievement gaps in our schools. I'll put the numbers up, show the incredible disparity between kids of color, special needs kids, immigrant kids, and ask, is this justice? Can nobody in the room say yes? This is not justice for children to go through our school district and we can determine their success by how much money they got or what color they are or their special needs that they might have. So, yes, and I'll be glad to write that up for you.
Hi, Dr. Lake. Thank you so much for being here. Noreen Dunnels with United Way, and I have a big question.
Yes.
And I will just say one of the things we did at our board meeting last night is we have just adopted Racial Justice Advisory Council to become part of the organization, to become part of our DNA. Mm-hmm. I've been here 11 and a half years in this community, and I've lived all across the country in different communities. And how do we create a more welcoming community for all people? And it's a huge question, but I think you've learned to figure out how to be part and create community here. How do we do that more effectively?
Remember how I described as a little black boy, I learned culture? I think everybody needs to remember that. And instead of defining ourselves along the lines of this odd descriptor of race, because that's socially constructed racial categories is what we end up using as a dividing line. And those are inauthentic. They're socially constructed, they're real, they operate as real in the media, in school, everywhere else. But these are not biological or genetic characteristics of human beings. The DNA of me and Jerry is basically the same. So if we're looking at race as a biological and genetic reality, everybody in here is the same race. Species is actually more accurate, but same race. And so if we think about where the dilemma is not in skin color. So if you think about a racial achievement gap, is there any research that suggests that the color of a person's face determines how their brain works? Any research that says the color of the face determines the potential of someone or their intellect? Zero. And so the socio-political context, they took my paper away, didn't they? You know, professors always have to have something to write on. No, the big piece. Here's what I want you to draw. Draw a circle. Anybody who's taking notes, draw a circle and put a smaller circle right in the inside. And this is what's called the socio-political context. That little circle inside is a person. On the outside of that person is all of the effects or factors that affect that person. And so if we think about a child in the achievement gap, we spend all our time focused on the child. What do we miss? All the factors that are actually going into the failure of this child. And so instead of focusing on skin color, what should we be focusing on? All of the factors that are negatively affecting this person. And so the socio-political context is a good mind map to think about if we are intending to address these larger structural, institutional kinds of issues. Because I done been through initiative after initiative after initiative, and nothing changes. I asked my colleagues, I said, are these the same kids we had 10 years ago? No. Are these the same parents we had 10 years ago? No. So why are we seeing the same outcomes 10 years later with different kids, different families? I mean, the only thing that didn't change in 10 years is probably what? The system. And so we really have to do structural and institutional work if we want to get a different outcome. I work with lawyers quite a bit, and they have the same dilemma we have of recruiting and keeping people here. And I had 90 lawyers in Portland, and my question to them was, if you recruited me from Tennessee and you talked me into coming to Oregon, you give me a good salary and say you're going to get promotion and y'all got a good law firm, and I say, okay, I'm going to Oregon. And I land in Portland, Oregon with a law firm with 90 lawyers. I said, somebody give me an answer. Where can I get a haircut? Nobody moved. I says, where can I find a church that has a real preacher who knows how to preach and a choir that really sings? Anybody, tell me. Nobody. I said, where can I get a place that cooks good Southern food? Because my mama could cook, my grandma could cook. I want good Southern food. Where can I go? Nobody moved. I said, where can I get an apartment that when I have insomnia and I want to take a walk in my own neighborhood at 10 o'clock at night, where could I live that I wouldn't get neighbors calling the police on me or police pulling up on the curb asking me, what am I doing in my own neighborhood? No answer. I said, so how long do you think I'm going to be here? You think a good salary and opportunity for promotion is going to make a life for me? If that's all I got here, I guarantee you I will not be here very long. And so if we think about that concept for our community, how much do we outreach to help people who are not from this community find the things that they need to feel that this place can be home for them too? And that's a real effort, because it means that you can't just sit back and say, well, watch them make it or watch them not make it. You got to be active and out reaching, helping people to find those places and helping them to feel that sense of home. Whoop, lost my cookie.
Thank you for being here with us today, Dr. Lake. Karen Knutson, City Club of Eugene member. And 10 questions I feel like I could ask, but one that comes to mind, and building on one of the previous questions, has to do with how we're thinking about making progress, growing, changing, and how we see that within our school systems. And also that sometimes when change is proposed and we imagine doing things differently, there can be some hesitation and some fear that somehow that change is going to lead to loss rather than growth and that transformation you were describing with the multicultural lens to the world. Can you talk a little bit about what parents and community members can do to support that type of progressive evolution, connectedness within our school communities?
Yeah. If we were starting at scratch, you could say we don't have to talk about our history. Or if our history had been addressed, we could say we don't need to attend to that. But when it's obvious that if John Barnum and myself walk up and down Main Street in this town long enough, that we would have incredibly different experiences right here, right now, today, then we have to admit that these things are still part of our communities. And so it's kind of like if one of your friends got a drinking problem and you say, hey, what you gonna do about a drinking problem? And they're like, what drinking problem? Where can you go from there? So all the denial that we have about these issues at the same time that they are going on makes it really difficult to address them. And so I think the nature of privilege came to mind when you were talking. I mean, who wants to give up their privilege? Even if they got it the wrong way, who ready to give up their privilege? And so I do this privilege conversation with people that privilege is like that seat you're sitting on, that pillow. And if it was $1 million in that pillow and you never took it out, what would that privilege be good for? Keeping your butt comfortable. That's it. It would help nobody. And you can sit on it for your whole life. If you don't use it, it's useless except for keeping your butt comfortable. Okay, take the $1 million out. If you had $1 million right now, how many people think that would be privilege? If you had $1 million cash right now, is that privilege? How many people think so? $1 million cash right now is privilege. Why would you imagine that to be privilege? Because there's something else you need to know to think that that's privilege. What do you need to know about everybody else? that they don't have $1 million. And so just by definition, privilege is you have something and you know that other people do not have it. That's by necessity, because that's the only way you can think of it as a privilege. Like I tell my kids, what if everybody had $1 million? How would your million feel then? And one kid said, it'd be like everybody having a penny, Dr. Lake, if everybody had $1 million. I said, so when we talk about racial equity or gender equity, what are we asking? If you had $1 million right now, would you share it with everybody in this room equally and you keep the same amount that they got? Anybody? Would you share it equally with everybody in this room and you keep the same amount that they got? You may help them out a little bit. Okay, I'll pay your house payment a couple of times, or I'll pay your car payment, but who's going to keep most of that money? You are. So when we talk about racial equity, we're talking about actually addressing the inequities that's been related to race for just a few weeks, right? It just started with this generation, right? What about gender equity? I mean, all of these areas of work that we are trying to do, everybody act like they're new. They're not new. When was America a white society, a white country? When was America a white country? Was it ever a white country? How long has America been a diverse country? From the get-go. As soon as some white people showed up, according to one native man, he said, we didn't have any problem with race around here until some white people showed up. So we have, for all of the history of this country, been a very diverse country, but how long have we been talking about it? How long have we been working on it? And for many of the elders in here, I think you remember. I remember, anybody remember the white-only signs? And the water fountains? So one generation, we're trying to change a whole society. And so this is the extent of change that America is trying to go through. Male privilege still exists, right? How many of you guys got up this morning and said, let me go out and get this privilege that's waiting on me. I just got to hurry up and get out here because I'm so privileged. We don't even have to own it. It just exists. Same thing with white people. How many people got this morning? Let me go out and get this white privilege that's just waiting on me out here in this community. And so we have to acknowledge that these structural and institutional arrangements still advantage certain people over other people. And that's where equity is really the right word, because it means that everybody should have equal opportunity to succeed in our schools and our community. Thank you. Good question.
That is unfortunately all the time we have for questions today. Join me again in thanking Dr. Johnny Lake. Thank you, Doctor. Great start to our year. And we'll be back next week at our normal spot across the way, September 15th, for a conversation about charting the course for the future of foster care in Oregon. So look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks.